In yesterday's epistle reading from the daily lectionary, we saw our writer make an important move in this letter to the Hebrews. He had spent a lengthy section emphasizing the priestly office of Jesus Christ, lifting up before the congregation the sacrifice Christ had made on their behalf. Then he had urged his congregation to maintain their hold on the faith. And then yesterday he began to talk about what faith is, followed by a series of miniature portraits about what faith looks like in action. All of this in an effort to bolster the faith of his flock when they were beginning to lose heart. Now he makes an important point meant to inspire them even more. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Tuesday, January 30th, 2024. Our writer defines faith as the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen, which, by the way, is worth memorizing if you haven't already. He then launched into a description of Old Testament figures who had faith and were commended by God for their faith. He specifically named Abel, Enoch, Noah, and Abraham as exemplars of holding firm to faith, often when it seemed illogical to do so. Now he makes a pivotal point about their faith. He writes, "All of these died in faith without having received the promises, but from a distance they saw and greeted them." This is a pivotal moment in this entire letter, for he establishes that our Christian hope may not be realized in our own lifetimes. To a congregation that was wavering in their faith, this was a frank but important admission. In many other New Testament writings, there is a pretty clearly expressed understanding that the promised return of Jesus Christ was imminent, that believers in that first generation of believers might actually see it. But here, he implies that the consummation of their hope may extend well beyond their own lifetimes. I love this because there is no hint of false advertising, so to speak. He doesn't sugarcoat the fact that they may all die before their hopes come to fruition. And then in the very next breath, he extends the point. Remember, these were Christians who felt like an oppressed, beleaguered minority. Understanding how they felt, he connects their own feelings to those of the Old Testament figures he lifts before them, saying, "They confessed that they were strangers and foreigners on the earth." For people who speak in this way make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. If they had been thinking of the land that they had left behind, they would have had an opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God. Indeed, he has prepared a city for them. The writer makes it plain here that their forebears in the faith faced much the same issue they were facing. They were often strangers in a strange land, even when that land was their own. The implication, of course, is that if they could do it, so could the members of his congregation. That was his message to his flock. Now he begins a kind of litany of heroes, beginning this time with Abraham and then going forward, each time introducing each character with the words, "by faith." He says, "By faith, Abraham, when put to the test, offered up Isaac. He who had received the promises was ready to offer up his only son, of whom he had been told, 'It is through Isaac that descendants shall be named for you.' He considered the fact that God is able even to raise someone from the dead. And figuratively speaking, he did receive him back. By faith, Isaac invoked blessings for the future on Jacob and Esau. By faith, Jacob, when dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph, bowing in worship over the top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, at the end of his life, made mention of the exodus of the Israelites and gave instructions about his burial." Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, 4 generations of the patriarchs, all of whom acted in faith to follow God's commands, when all evidence pointed to the irrationality of these actions. And yet, they were all vindicated. Parts of the promises were fulfilled in their own lifetimes, but the ultimate promise was not fulfilled until long after each one died. Abraham, for example, did not live to see his descendants become, quote, as numerous as the stars of heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore. But he believed God and did what God asked him to do. In short, he kept the faith when it would have been easier to remain in Haran, where he was from, and continue to live the same life as his father before him, and his father's father, and his father's father's father, and so on. Abraham had faith and lived by that faith in spite of it all. For the writer of the letter to the Hebrews, it was important that the members of his congregation do the same, even when to revert to their former lives would be so much easier. Tomorrow, Moses and the children of Israel and what they did by faith. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.